Welcome to Fashionand with me, Scott Schiavone, Fashion Curator. Just a reminder that you can keep up to date with everything Fashionand by following @Fashionand with Scott Schiavone on Instagram and by hitting that subscribe button. This episode is dedicated to the grand dame of British fashion. This is Fashionand Westwood. Fashion is very important, it is life enhancing, and like everything that gives pleasure, it is worth doing well. A working class girl from Northern England, Vivienne Westwood's career has spanned over 5 decades. Vivienne Westwood has always embraced British culture, whilst turning the establishment on its head, and has used her fashion as a platform to showcase her cultural and environmental concerns. A former primary school teacher, Westwood is the queen of the British Avant Garde. Her undying passion, originality and dogged perseverance proves that a true punk spirit never dies. In the 1970s, alongside Malcolm McLaren, Westwood was instrumental in bringing punk into the mainstream, and in the following decades, her imagination, historical narrative, clever construction and use of traditional fabrics ensured her a place as one of the greatest and most influential fashion designers of the 20th century. In more recent years, the designer has used her platform to raise awareness of environmental and human rights issues, incorporating her beliefs into her designs, painting her models with rallying slogans, and donating a percentage of her sales to cultural, political and environmental causes. It is the intellectual quality she brings to her work that sets her aside from any other designer. She is unconventional, radical, and her self-discipline makes her original. Throughout her groundbreaking career, she has introduced a new vocabulary and language into fashion, and has remained one of the most inventive and influential British fashion designers of all time. In this episode, we will be exploring the life and work of Vivienne Westwood through 4 themes: women in rebel, punks, pirates and pagans, anglomania, and icon and activist. Fashion became for Westwood a baby I picked up and never put down. Vivienne Isabel Swire was born in Glossop, Derbyshire on the 8th of April 1941. Growing up in post-war Britain, coupled with her working class background, developed an attitude of self-sufficiency and a dislike for waste. As a teenager, Vivienne made many of her own clothes, including dresses in the style of Dior's New Look, and customising her school uniform into a fashionable pencil skirt. In the late 1950s, Vivienne and her family moved to Harrow in northwest London. At 16, Vivienne left school and started a foundation course at Harrow School of Art, studying jewellery and silversmithing, but left soon after, saying, "I didn't really know how a working class girl like me could make a living in the art world." After taking up a job in a factory and studying at Teacher Training College, she became a primary school teacher. Vivienne met Derek Westwood, a Hoover factory apprentice, at a dance hall. They married in 1962, and the following year their son Ben was born. However, in 1965, Vivienne met Malcolm McLaren. She divorced Derek and moved with McLaren into a council flat in Clapham, where their son Joseph Corey was born in 1967. Vivienne returned to teaching until 1971, when with Malcolm McLaren she would turn British fashion on its head. They opened their first shop, Let It Rock, in 1971 at 430 Kings Road. As an antidote to the largely middle-class hippie movement, the shop sold 50s merchandise, including records, circle skirts and vintage Teddy Boy clothing. When the vintage clothes ran out, Vivienne taught herself how to make replicas by taking apart the 1950s originals. In 1972, the duo's interest shifted to the biker look, and in tribute to James Dean, the shop was relaunched as Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die. Alongside heavily studded leather clothes, they sold motorcycle memorabilia, oil-stained second-hand Levi's and printed t-shirts. Vivienne started designing new original pieces, she introduced a line of mohair sweaters and would boil up leftover bones and apply them to the front of t-shirts. In 1974, the shop rebranded once again, this time as Sex, and sold Westwood adapted fetishistic rubber and bondage garments. The interior was sprayed with pornographic graffiti, hung with rubber curtains, and stocked with rubber bodysuits, leather miniskirts, fishnets, and stilettos. Sex was intimidating, not only in the name, but also in the concept, mixing the idea of a fashion boutique with a BDSM dungeon. The original Sex t-shirts were painted by hand on Westwood's kitchen table using a child's printing set and stencils. McLaren devised the images and text, while Westwood deconstructed the garments, slashing necks and adding zips to reveal nipples. A staff member, Alan Jones, was arrested for gross indecency for wearing the naked cowboy t-shirt in Piccadilly Circus. Westwood and McLaren saw their rebellion as one of youth against age. It reconstituted every notion of what people thought of themselves and the way they looked. When I did punk, I never in my whole career thought I would be able to create something that would make such an impact. It was so different to anything that had ever been around before. Punk was such a powerful statement. Kids were dyeing their hair pink, putting safety pins through their cheeks and wearing chains and spikes. Vivienne was punk's prototype. Her style was extraordinary. Platinum blonde spiked hair, pale skin with dark lipstick and mini kilts with outsized bondage boots. The Sex Pistols, formed in 1975, seemed to represent the culmination of what Malcolm and Vivienne had come to signify. Their look was aggressive and shocking, and when fused with the music, guaranteed constant press interest, which helped spread their anarchistic mantras to teenagers the world over. In 1977, Westwood and McLaren's shop was relaunched as Seditionaries, for soldiers, prostitutes, dykes and punks. Westwood wanted to seduce people to revolt. The designer had never had a better vehicle for her designs and ideas on style. The clothing was a mashup from the torn clothes of the pin-ups in Let It Rock, the chain zips and customization of Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die, and the rubber-wearing bondage garments of Sex. Printed images of the Queen with swastika eyes or safety-pinned nose appeared on t-shirts, and their popular bondage trousers were produced in a variety of colours, including tartan. With the downfall of the Sex Pistols and the absorption of punk into the mainstream, Westwood became disenchanted. I got tired of looking at clothes from the point of view of rebellion. I found it exhausting, and after a while, I wasn't sure if I was right. In 1979, Seditionaries closed its doors. The start of the new decade marked a radical departure in their approach to clothing and design. Westwood and McLaren looked to pirates, the romantics of the high seas, and the final incarnation of 430 Kings Road was launched as World's End, a combination of Dickensian curiosity shop and lurching galleon. Moving towards historicism and romanticism, Westwood came into her own as a designer. She started to do something unique. Instead of superimposing elements of historic fashion into her collections, Westwood went back to the original source, studying historical garments and literally copying their cuts and toile. The Pirate collection for Autumn-Winter 1981 reinterpreted and experimented with historical dress, ethnic cuts and patterns. Westwood and McLaren cast a new spell with the swashbuckling clothes of highwaymen, dandies, buccaneers and pirates. The collection was dominated by the unisex pirate shirt, a shirt pattern that had been used for 500 years, and the now iconic squiggle print. It featured low-slung, roomy half-mast trousers, damask and madras striped jackets, and black bicorn felt hats trimmed with gold tassels and cockades. Pirates was followed by Savages, which mixed ethnic and Dickensian themes, Nostalgia for Mud, later renamed Buffalo, which featured Rastafarian and primitivist clothes cut deliberately large so that models had to hold them in place. Couture, which was described in the press as bag lady chic, and Witches, which used designs by American artist Keith Haring and was the last Westwood and McLaren collaboration. This period from 1981 to 1985, dubbed Westwood's New Romantic period, was followed by another period between 1988 to 1991 known as the Pagan Years. Anglomania referred to the French passion for all things English, literature, language and clothing that prevailed during the 1780s when the foppish pre-revolutionary French aristocracy looked to the plainer English styles. Westwood's fascination with Anglomania and both English and Scottish traditions was first seen in her groundbreaking mini crinny collection for Spring-Summer 1985. Unlike the 1980s focus on the shoulders, mini crinny emphasised the hips and featured abbreviated crinolines, patented in France in 1856 and popularised during the Second French Empire, but combined with the modern miniskirt. I've been keeping this idea of the crinny for a year or two, for when I could make use of it properly. Mini crinny marked another change of direction for Westwood. Cotton skirts and meticulously researched Victorian styles were worn with her now iconic rocking horse shoes. The Harris Tweed collection for autumn-winter 1987 used specially commissioned tweeds made in the Scottish Hebrides. Beautifully tailored jackets and knitted twin sets accessorised with Harris tweed crowns, rocking horse shoes, pearly queen hats for women and deerstalkers for men gently parodied refined British establishment styles of dress. This was when Westwood devised her iconic logo, a Saturn-like ring added to the Harris tweed orb. Westwood's portrait collection for autumn-winter 1990 was one of her richest and most elaborate collections to date. Many of the garments were influenced by her love of the French paintings, ceramics and furniture on display in London's Wallace collection. Westwood used a rococo design derived from a brass inlay pattern on the back of an 18th century mirror by furniture designer André Charles Boulle. She copied the design in gold ink onto stretched black velvet, intentionally letting it crack like the glaze of an old master painting. I'm a great believer in copying. There has never been an age in which people have so little respect for the past. But the crowning glory of the portrait collection was a corset which featured a photographic print used as a front panel of a painting by Francois Boucher of a shepherd watching a sleeping shepherdess. Portrait received critical acclaim and was the start of a series of fantastic fashion shows steeped in the dichotomy between English and French culture. Westwood's autumn-winter 1993 collection called Anglomania reiterated the designer's fascination with English and Scottish traditions. Using tartan more successfully than any other designer, the collection featured mini-kilt ensembles and clashing tweeds, argyles and tartans, especially woven at the Lochcarron textile mill. It was during this show where fashion history was made, when Naomi Campbell, wearing a royal blue velvet jacket, tartan kilt and slippery cream rubber stockings, famously fell from her 10-inch super elevated mock croc platforms. Café Society for Spring-Summer 1994 focused on French styles from the 1890s to the 1910s and was inspired by Toulouse-Lautrec and the work of the English-born couturier Charles Frederick Worth, who established his house in Paris in 1858. The collection was imbued with the spirit of the Belle Epoque and made reference to the past through reconstruction of cut and referencing the clothing and fabric seen in old master paintings. Autumn-winter 1995's Vive la Cocotte collection took its inspiration from the 17th century courtesan Ninon de l'Enclos. Westwood exaggerated the female figure to new extremes by using padded busts and a metal cage to emphasise hips and bums. The silhouette, based on a reworking of Dior's new look, was aggressive and confrontational, but Westwood didn't mind that, saying, "My clothes offer choice in an age of conformity. They're ultra-feminine and promote feminine power instead of trying to look mannish. I think that women should be women and seduction is part of it. Westwood understood women and saw them through a woman's eye. Westwood's women were audacious, flirty, sexy and feminine and never commonplace. Her next collection, Les Femmes ne connaissaient pas toute leur coquetterie, for spring-summer 1996, featured exquisite ball gowns and potentially one of Westwood's most famous dresses. The Watteau evening dress in green silk, shot with lilac taffeta with a burgundy bow, was worn by Linda Evangelista. At the heart of this design was the 18th century sack-back dress, or robe à la Française, but it was subverted and made sexy with its strapless one shoulder and exaggerated tight bodice. The flamboyance of the bows and white kid glove added an element of whimsy that captured our imagination and was so typical of Westwood's work throughout the 1990s. With a design record spanning over 50 years, Vivienne Westwood is now recognised as a global brand, and Westwood herself as one of the most influential fashion designers and activists in the world. Westwood has twice earned the award for British Designer of the Year in 1990 and 1991, and in 1992 was awarded an OBE, which she collected from Her Majesty at Buckingham Palace. At the ceremony, Westwood was captured spinning in the courtyard of the palace. She was knickerless. The designer later said, "I wish to show off my outfit by twirling the skirt. It did not occur to me that as the photographers were practically on their knees, the result would be more glamorous than I expected. I have heard that the picture amused the Queen." In 2006, her contribution to British fashion was recognised when she was appointed Dame of the British Empire for services to fashion. Vivienne Westwood has always used her collections and catwalk shows as a platform to campaign for positive activism. She has spent many years tirelessly speaking out about the effects of climate change, human rights and overconsumption. In 2007, Vivienne wrote her manifesto titled Active Resistance to Propaganda. The AR manifesto evolved through Westwood's fashion shows, which she used as a platform for her cultural and environmental concerns. Global warming is at the tipping point. If we go past it, we can't stop it. All the methane kicks in. We're there right now. We have to stop it. Vivienne is a trustee of human rights organisation Liberty, a patron of Reprieve, a campaigner for Amnesty International, a supporter of Cool Earth and the Environmental Justice Foundation and Friends of the Earth. Since 2011, the designer has produced bags to the UN's International Trade Centre's Ethical Fashion Initiative, a programme that supports the work of thousands of women from marginalised African communities and empowers informal manufacturers and craftspeople to enter the international value chain, providing an income for some of the poorest people in the world. Nowadays, Vivienne Westwood designs alongside her partner of over 25 years, Andreas Kronthaler. From autumn-winter 2016, Vivienne Westwood's gold label was renamed Andreas Kronthaler for Vivienne Westwood to highlight their work together and the significance of Andreas's leadership as creative director. I have designed with Vivienne for more than 25 years. To add my name is to emphasise and clarify the differences between our lines. It's not a big change to the way we work, but it will bring a new direction and I am happy and excited for the future. From the ever-changing concept stores of 430 Kings Road, via the loose, unstructured geometry of the early catwalk collections and the technically challenging tailoring of the 1990s, to the propaganda-laden slogans and presentations of today, the progression and perseverance of Vivienne Westwood's work has never ceased to inspire and innovate. It is the intellectual quality she brings to her work that sets her aside from any other designer. Her imagination, historical narrative, clever construction, and her awareness of environmental and human rights issues places her as one of the most inventive, influential, and dynamic fashion designers of our generation. The Grand Dame of British fashion. Throughout her groundbreaking career, she has introduced a new vocabulary and language into fashion and has remained the queen of the British Avant Garde. From punks to coquettes, that's it for the anarchistic world of fashion in Westwood. I'll see you next time, but before you go, Don't forget to subscribe to Fashionand with me, Scott Giavone, fashion curator.